AI can't outpace your connectivity to the world. Even when it becomes advanced, it's just never going to be as in tune as being a person experiencing the world. And I think to balance out this rise of over optimization, over AI use, I think people are really craving human experiences, human creativity. There are creators who are advertising that, hey, my illustrations are generative AI free. That is the equivalent of having an organic sticker on an avocado now. Like, oh my gosh, like it was,
You mean you drew it and you're an
exactly,
artist?
exactly, like human error, like emotions, like wow.
What happens when the fight for public education becomes the fight for our democracy? And that's the question that's going to be driving this Just Talks podcast episode. I'm Allie Collins, and for the past several years, I've been tracking the rise of political attacks on our schools. But the story doesn't end here. It exploded onto a nationwide battle for truth. In this new season, we're moving beyond the headlines to speak with the people actually winning the war for our future. Joining me today is Ranier Maningding, founder of LLAG Media. He's a master of storytelling and digital strategy who has helped countless BIPOC-led orgs and brands navigate the most treacherous corners of the internet. Today, he's here to teach us how to spot the traps, understand the new era of disinformation, algorithms, and AI propaganda, and use the power of storytelling to reclaim our democracy. Let's get into it. I'm so grateful you're taking the time to talk today. I wanted to focus our conversation on what you're seeing as someone with expertise in social media and messaging over the past several years. The level of manipulation out here has become painfully obvious, and I'd love to share your perspective with my audience, both as an expert on messaging and also as an Asian American man who's grown up online and on social media. So, Rainier, your background is originally in marketing, but your interests and talents have obviously taken you well beyond that niche. I'm going to quote your website on this because it's a lot. You're a copywriter, video editor, live stream host, meme mixologist, community organizer, graphic designer, and content marketing strategist. And knowing you, I can say that all of this is absolutely true. You built your career as editor-at-large at Next Shark, where you co-founded Rebel Yellow, a civil rights storytelling platform for Asian Americans to talk honestly about race, politics, and pop culture. And not only do you have extensive communication experience, but growing up online, you have deep experience connecting with audiences and building community. I've personally experienced this through your work on Facebook, office hours, and other social media endeavors. And you're a dog dad. I hope I got everything right. So what did I miss, or what are you up to now? Tell me a little bit about what you're active in doing at the moment.
So, I mean, you're very right. I've spent quite literally my entire adult life on social media. I started my platforms as early as, my teens, being on MySpace, being on Zanga, being a typical millennial, started off on Facebook. And I started my Facebook page, when I was 18. So, out of the the digital womb, I was creating and talking about all my observations about culture and politics. And, in my 15 plus years of creating, this can sound very fighting game nerd of me, but it's very Mokujin. And what Mokujin is in the video game, the fighting game Tekken, there's a character called Mokujin. And he's a random select character. He's like this tree man, tree woman. And basically the concept is when you play Mokujin, every round of your 3 rounds, you play as a different part of the roster. So one round you are Eddie Gordo, another round you're Jin Kazama. But the basic premise is that you have to know how to use the whole roster in order to use this random select character. But on the opposite end, your opponent has no idea what they're doing either. And so being a creator, being a writer, being a marketer, being a brand strategist, they all have this component of like wearing different hats and never really knowing what you're stepping into, but having to have that fluency of like, I'm uncomfortable, the person that I'm working with, they're uncomfortable, but we need to fight. Like it's either we do something or we just get crushed. And so despite this random select nature of marketing, of my early years of sales and content creation, I think the common thread has just been having consistent values, having the belief that everyone deserves a home, food, education. And so I kind of see my career as like being this digital Filipino sailor going to different islands on the interwebs, floating to different places, and oh my gosh, like this is awesome. You have this interesting environment and things that you're doing. I want to report back to my people all the things that I've learned. So it's been it's been fun. Every year is different. Every year is an adventure.
Well, so I want to get into where you started. And from what I know about you, you grew up as a Filipino American kid living in San Jose, which is otherwise known as Silicon Valley. Is that
Mm,
correct?
correct.
Okay. And so this is a time when there was rapidly expanding tech wealth. And a lot of people may not, they may think of San Jose as just a whole bunch of rich people, but there is actually, it's very diverse community. And there's a lot of socio-economic, racial, and cultural diversity. And so how has that experience growing up in the heart, in like the belly of the beast, in tech, right? With tech all around and social media giants all around, how has that informed you and the work that you do and your perspectives?
In a lot of interesting ways, for better or worse, however you want to phrase it. Because on one hand, you're surrounded by all this big tech, and this is the age of like, when I graduated, the iPhone had just released. And so I'm really like at the bleeding edge of like when this revolution starts. And so seeing this, the glorification of tech CEOs and, oh my gosh, Mark Zuckerberg, he only wears one shirt. Like, wow, like he's so humble. And like just seeing that transition from like, Google is the best place to be. There are slides and unlimited breakfast and like all these perks. And then now it's like,
Oh,
am I going to have
maybe
a
the
job?
people. Yeah.
So it has been an interesting experience just to see how that has shifted, especially as somebody who wanted to get into tech. I wanted to have that job. My sister worked at Google. So I saw, oh my God, she can take my mom to get free lunch. I want to be like that, right? But then you get into jobs in tech and you see the reality on the ground of what it actually takes to work in these companies and what these industries are like and what these CEOs are like and what the work culture is like. And it's plated gold. And you realize once you get right under that surface, there's a lot of really nasty stuff. And there's a reason why a lot of them now are so intertwined in the Trump administration. So it is at least gratifying to know that even though I didn't make it to the club, actually I didn't want to be in the club. So it's vindicating from a moral perspective, but knowing at what cost,
Right.
knowing that these people are leading the charge in disinformation, in the overwhelming displacement of workers through AI, it's it's scary, but at the same time, I know that there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of people who need help. There's still a lot of people who are doing amazing things, creating spaces like yours where people can talk about these things because, especially now with ever increasing censorship towards progressive voices, speaking up really is a very radical act.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that because I want to be transparent and say that the way I found you was you were really active on Twitter, now X, as it's called, in around 2020. And I remember really enjoying your posts and your threads, but we started communicating more directly after I was targeted by an online political smear campaign. And I have to say that I was deeply gratified and like, I'm just grateful that you reached out to me. And at the time, I was like hunkering down in this bunker of just being pummeled online. I was just being inundated. And you reached out and said that you were interested in doing an interview with me and were also being really supportive of me online. We weren't close friends or anything like that. And I was grateful that you wanted to elevate my voice. And at the same time, I was too scared to even be interviewed. And I remember watching your office hours where you did this deep dive on everything that was going on in San Francisco. And you weren't even in San Francisco at the time, but you were interested in like the kind of like the social cultural dynamics of and political dynamics of just what was going on. And you actually dug up some information that I didn't even know when you showed, oh, these people that are targeting Allie, they are on these conservative podcasts, they're on the Glenn Beck show. I was like, they are? So it was almost like I was an audience member learning about stuff that was going on with me. It was seriously wild. And I just have to say, like, what is it about you, or what is it that motivated you? Because it was definitely a toxic space. Like, anyone who supported me at that time, I have friends who then became targeted, and they're not even elected officials. And you jumped in to the fire. You were, I have something to say about this. And it was a hot topic in San Francisco at the time. And so I'm just wondering, what motivated you to reach out? What motivated you to start talking about this topic? And what have you learned since? Because I think that was before Elon Musk owned Twitter. It wasn't the safest place then, but it has definitely changed. And so what motivated you to get involved or engage with the conversation that was happening in San Francisco? And what have you learned since then about just social media and political activity around politics?
So, the nature of a lot of the content that I started to post in my mid 20s, when I started to really talk about politics, really happened around the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, when people start to really publish their videos and experiences of racist bosses and encounters at the grocery store and things that prior to social media and prior to that movement, we just never saw. I mean, you'd always hear in books talking about the civil rights movement, and you can only get traces of photos and stories, but to actually get firsthand accounts happening that day, it was just so wild. And I think that instilled this interest in me of like, what's actually happening to people, to marginalized people, to Black people, to trans people, to Asian people. As an Asian American, as a Filipino American who has experienced being underrepresented in media and in all types of media, movies, TVs, whatever, it just embedded this fascination of what is happening in the margins. Because anytime, I mean, we've all experienced the things that are in the middle, the things that are commonplace, the things that are the most popular. But I think what rounds out the beauty of life are these other stories that also tell the story of what it means to be Asian or to be Black. And so having that fascination, I was sent the post talking about what you were going through, because at that time I was really interested in the intersections between Asian and Black communities. In my early 20s, it was mainly about interracial dating because, surprise, surprise, I'm a 20-year-old, I'm an 18-year-old. This is before I met my wife. But after that, it segued more into a fascination of like, what's the history behind Asian and Black people? And like, okay, yeah, the dating aspect is interesting, but like, what is the timeline of their dynamic in America or internationally or in even just in California and San Francisco, which is fascinating. And so your story was positioned as this sort of battleground between the Black community, the Asian community. And I've always been one to not automatically cheer for the Asian side just because I'm Asian. Like, especially being in the Bay Area with other Asian people, I don't have that bias and need to like, oh my God, I need to just unapologetically support my people no matter what. I wanted to just snuff out what was going on. And so even just at first glance, at a basic level, it was easy to see that they were warping your words. And for me, it was like this no-brainer, like, why are they picking on this educator? I saw you, and I continue to see you as, in the best way possible, a very Sesame Street NPR, very family-friendly voice. I don't know why some of the most horrible people on the internet are targeting you. And I think being in this space where I've been reporting on injustice, I saw that as a grave injustice. And I wanted to just figure out who are these people? And I remember diving into that couple that was writing all these hit pieces on you and making all this content. I think being in marketing, being in branding, there is always that double consciousness of the creative and there's a communicative aspect of it, but who's financing this idea? Who orchestrated this? Who wrote the copy? Who organized this interview with Fox News. So there are these deeper questions about why this piece of media exists. And having been in the space of propaganda and misinformation politics, you could just see that the playbook was being written. And it really is interesting because looking back at it and looking back, you really were at the beginning of this massive war on education that now the battleground is completely shifted. I remember you talking about the dangers of big tech entering into education, privatizing education. Here in Phoenix, Arizona, schools have been shutting down, the increase in charter schools. So you have been a fortune teller in your own right, talking about this for a very, very long time. And so it's it's that weird feeling of it's great to be vindicated, it's great to be right, but it's also it sucks to be right. It sucks that this is being right means things suck and
Yeah.
things are getting worse and more complicated.
Yeah. So I mean, now we're dealing with this right-wing kind of pipeline. You've got Moms for Liberty, so they storm the school board. There's their friend videoing them. They send it to Fox News. It blows up on Fox News. There's a cycle, right? And so, as somebody who understands getting a narrative pushed out, it's not just random that a mom gets an op-ed in the Washington Post, like,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
so you understand that, right? But to see now, I mean, honestly, you could kind of see where it was going, but I never would have predicted that we would have the president of the free world and like Iran, like having like a meme battle via AI videos featuring
Legos.
Jesus and Lego characters and hip hop music. I didn't predict that. And then also we've got Dr. Evil is now running X. It's perfect that he likes a black X because I mean, if I made a movie about Dr. Evil, I would have him look like that and like it would be called X, and he'd be a billionaire. And so my question is, did you predict that? Did you see that coming? And how are you helping folks navigate? The internet wasn't always safe, but it was a very different place when you got on. I remember Facebook, I would just, see pictures of my friends from high school, right? There was an AI slop of Jesus as a lobster, right? So what do you think about that? You're advising people, you're helping people build brands in kind of toxic spaces owned by some really nefarious people. And yet this is the marketplace. This is where small brands have to go in order to get their message out. If you're a politician, you still have to do social media, right? So, what are your thoughts on where we are now and how we navigate in this kind of strange new world that we're in?
I mean, we're at a place where everything is content and all content can be political or is political. You could post a video of you at IHOP eating your pancakes and someone's going to make a stitch. This is a very millennial thing to do. And then now it's the centerpiece of this discourse of generational warfare and millennial cringe. So on one side, they could be something as like random as that. But like you said, it could be all the way to Iran making Lego AI videos parodying Trumping and Epstein files, or also the social media pages of the White House and the Department of Homeland Security making Super Mario memes out of drone footage. Like we are in the strangest timeline, but to your question of did I anticipate this? I think if you follow content and just the trends of memes as a communicative form of protest, because memes is just a context. You can use that to spread fascist propaganda. You can use that to spread promotions for Zoran Mamdani. Like and seeing the way that memes have been integrated at the highest levels of government communication, I think it speaks to the importance of social media. I remember feeling so unsure of myself when I had been invited to do a TED Talk back in 2017. I was 27 years old. And I remember the morning that I was supposed to do it, I was changing the script because I wasn't sure how I wanted to phrase it. Trump had just been elected for his first term, and it was literally days after. And my first few slides were about calling Trump the devil. And I was in upstate New York. I didn't know if if I was going to make it back live, but I had made that speech saying that I feel like social media is going to be this landscape of civil rights. It's going to be this battleground, because I knew that there were these conversations that were really transforming everyday life. And so we're seeing it to levels that we just cannot even comprehend, even with the age of streaming, the age of crypto, the age of AI. Someone, I think there's this op-ed in the Atlantic or something like that, where they said that we are fully in the cyberpunk era. Even though it's not like Mike Pondsmith, the creator of Cyberpunk, even though it's not his vision of people having rockets on their arms and whatnot, the one aspect that really is true is just this over optimization of everything. Looks maxing is the over optimization and the commodification of the body, trying to optimize the face and make it as perfectly tuned to get brand deals and sponsorships and to be as monetizable as possible. Social media has just invaded every single part of us. People are having babies to create content. They're changing their lives and morphing their face and injecting themselves with this and that. People are being open neo-Nazis to make content, making content where they are streamers who are rage baiting to make content, and people are making money. This is a new economy. There are billions of dollars being made. And it's no longer just these small brand deals of, oh, I got sponsored by this candle maker. People are getting sponsored by governments to push
Yeah.
propaganda. And so misinformation is the baseline. People can enter into this space, go into AI, make me an AI profile picture, help me strategize the name and the purpose, help me automatically generate a feed of things that I can constantly be posting. Let's monetize everything and make money off of that. Or let's make a fake AI artist rip off all the songs from Michael Jackson and Beyonce and then monetize on Spotify. So it's
Well,
it
so
is the Wild West.
how do you deal with that as somebody who, I mean, you're actually a creative person. You're a writer. And I'm sorry, I'm an English teacher, and I can tell when my students use ChatGPT to write their essays, they suck. So part of it too is, yeah, maybe AI can help us refine things, but if you're not an expert, if you don't really know what you're trying to create, you can't write the prompt anyway, and you can't evaluate whether what you're getting is good. And I'll tell you, as a teacher as well, going back to the classroom, I've seen how students they're not used to thinking, right? So if you don't do the critical thinking work, a lot of the production is going downhill. So how do you, as a creative person, reconcile? You do still like being on social media, you still like helping people navigate it, you obviously benefits to it, and at the same time, as a creator whose work may be getting ripped off, right? Or you may be competing with folks who are writing their chat GPT off of what you said, right? How do you reconcile that? And I guess what advice do you have, or what are your hopes for how things evolve from where we are?
Well, I think the good thing about AI is that it is very predictable, and anybody who actually is a true creative in the sense that I have this crappy drawing and that's just what it is. And it doesn't need to be this polished Studio Ghibli thing that I press a button and 2 seconds later it looks exactly like me. If you appreciate what it means for a kid to give you a macaroni art, then you appreciate what the spirit of creating something and the process of actually learning what that actually means. And when we're looking at it from an AI versus creative and content creation perspective, the great thing about being a writer is that you are the ultimate prompt engineer. And if you understand and familiarize yourself with AI, and if you've ever used AI, it's only as good as the instructions that you give it. It's only as good as the details that you provide it. And also, it's only as good as the data that it was used to construct that model. And so, if you tell AI to make me a song, it's not going to know if you mean that I want it to be influenced by Ray Charles with the hint of Michael Jackson's bass lines and like all these tiny little things. And even that is just one example of AI aside, as a human, you can incorporate so much of yourself, your own life, the lives of your team, the details of the things that are going on in the world. AI can't outpace your connectivity to the world and your awareness that there is a war going on. Trump did this. He said this. AI is just not going to make that type of content for you. And even when it becomes advanced, it's just never going to be as in tune as being a person experiencing the world. And I think to balance out this rise of over optimization, over AI use, I think people are really craving human experiences, human creativity. There are creators who are advertising that, hey, my illustrations are generative AI free. That is the equivalent of having an organic sticker
Right.
on an avocado now. Like,
Right.
oh my gosh, like it was,
You mean you
well,
drew it and you're an artist?
exactly, exactly, like human error, like emotions, like wow, like, and so, people are going to adapt, and the thing that is going to outpace AI production and ingenuity is just the boredom of humans. I don't want to see another Studio Ghibli drawing. I don't want to see another like AI video after this war is done, right? People change their opinions. Dubai chocolate is not as interesting as it was 4 years ago. And so that is what I think a lot of people misunderstand about creativity and creation is people want things that fit the times. And now the times are changing. And now that things are more chaotic, we're going back to this 90s, 70s,
Dude, I'm becoming
Vietnam
cool
War
again.
aesthetic.
Will you tell my kids? I'm like retro now. I'm pre Y2K, you know?
There you go, premium.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, I've been actually hearing though this new generation like analog is this cool thing. People are getting into tape decks and Walkmans and listening to records and zines. Like I personally, I've even been reminiscing about blogs. A blog is a space where, yeah, you have to come to my blog, but there aren't any trolls on my blog. And I get to write what I want to write and nobody messes with me. It's my space. And so I'm feeling like we got a little too comfortable with these spaces. There was a little bit of a false advertising, right? Come on Facebook, you can meet up with your friends. And then more and more it became about ads and politics and disinformation. But the spaces that we own can still be those spaces. But I think people have forgotten that you can have a blog or you can do a zine or you can, have a garage band, right? Like those are still cool. And yet we're used to just kind of scrolling and having things delivered to us through these aggregators. And I think we need to get less lazy and get more about going out to seek out the kind of content that we want to see and what we want to support. So, on that note, what are you doing now? What should we be supporting? What should we be doing? What are you reading? What projects are you excited about that if folks care about independent voices, voices on the margins, right? What do you think just regular folks should be doing to help us evolve in a positive way?
I feel like content wise, a lot of things are happening. And I think one of the most important things that people need to recognize is creating a brand oftentimes is associated with this icky kind of marketing. Oh, I'm going to like turn myself into a product and I'm like this influencer on camera and like I'm not like, this isn't reality TV. And I think that there is, especially for a lot of millennials and Gen X who have that memory of like, oh, like, what is this TRL? Like, like people have this misconception of what it means to be online. But to that point of like all these different platforms, Facebook and Instagram, and the issue of being shadow banned and having to move and migrate and all that, I think that's one of the reasons why taking ownership of your band is so important because it's actually just control of your voice independent of the platform. Because one of the worst things is if you create a space on YouTube, you spend 10 years posting videos and all of a sudden you're banned. And then now you're like, I need to move, I need to shift. Whereas if you create this community in this space where people recognize the value of what you do and what you have to say, and that they care about you and you want to follow your journey, it isn't going to matter whether you're on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. As long as you've made those genuine connections, you'll have people who will follow you and read your stuff wherever you go. And that's happened to me. And that's what I try to work on with a lot of my clients, because to that point of this larger information war, I see every platform as having the potential to advocate for something bigger than whatever it is that they're posting. Whether you're posting video game footage, or you're posting about your garden, or whether you're posting about children's books. I'm not saying you have to necessarily fully be like fundraising for your local governor's race, but you could advocate for a spay and neuter shelter. You could be advocating for a up and coming brand owned by people in your community. There are a lot of different things that you could care about. And just caring about other things other than just your shtick is you participating in the larger conversation that is happening. Because like I said before, all content can be political, and being political doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're taking this hardline ideological stance. It can be something as simple as, I believe that people deserve homes. I believe that children shouldn't have to pay for school lunches. And so I think one of the easiest things that you can do is take ownership of that voice by talking about different things, talking about things that you see in your community. Oh, a data center is being proposed. I don't like that. This guy is being funded to run for senator in our area, and he is in close ties with Turning Point USA. I have a problem with that. And I think people underestimate the value of just participating. Like, I know it sounds kind of grim looking at it, but it's like you're enlisting in the information war as a soldier, in a sense, because you will be attacked. And oftentimes when you voice your opinions, you will be targeted. You will have people who will come after you. And so that is the difficulty of being in the space. But I think when we just really look at the context of what we are faced with right now, and with the amount of people who are being stripped from their homes, people who are being let go from their jobs in the most cold ways, they want us to not talk. They want us to be silenced off these platforms. And for as ironic as it is that the cancel culture community has been railing about being canceled, the people who are actually being canceled and who are actually being pushed off of are progressive voices, are voices who are just very measured and reasonable and talking about things that are very important. And so I just urge people to realize that you can do a lot with a little.
So, what projects are you working on? Where can people follow you? Where can people find you? How can people support your work?
So some of the things that I'm working on, I have a new podcast called Season Fighters. So I had my podcast previously, which is LLAG Radio. That was like something that I started off at the beginning of COVID, because I was like, who knows what's happening with the world right now? Let's give a space for everybody to talk about it. The first season was really just talking about COVID and talking about like, how's your life changed and what's going on. And as I started working on that, I realized that I actually really love talking to really interesting, smart people. And I think that my audience would benefit from just learning about these people's experiences. And so I rebranded it to Seasoned Fighters, so I can actually spend a little bit more time focusing on the clients individually, not be so concerned with having a very set production, but just dedicating a full month to just exploring this person's mind, all the topics that they're an expert at. So I've been working on that. Also, obviously, I've been hard
Well,
to work at
wait a
the
second. Where can
agency.
we watch that, or when is that going to be? Is that on right now? Is that something? Where do we
Yes.
go to find that?
So you can go to my YouTube page at LLAG Media,
Okay, and I'll put
but we're
everything down
also
below.
on. Yeah, I'll share the link and everything, and I also am on Instagram at the lag, or also on Facebook. But yeah, other than that, just hard work at the agency, continuing to work in the nonprofit space, work in politics. So I'm just trying to find people who are doing interesting work for different communities, people who are in the margins, fighting for something that I think deserves a bigger voice.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful for you being on the podcast, for the work that you do. And I'm a big fan, and I will continue following your work. I just want to say thanks again for taking the time to talk. And I look forward to seeing what you're doing next.
Same as it's been an honor.
I've been reflecting a lot on my conversation with Rainier. As he mentioned, social media networks are full of beefs hyping conflict between boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. And many of these discussions stem from our preferred modes of communication. Over time, our use of letters and phone calls moved online to emails and social media posts, with younger generations communicating almost solely via texting apps and social media sites. In this way, technology has played a huge part in the ways that generational differences are defined, with boomers struggling to adapt or even understand new forms of communication, aka memes, of millennials and Gen Zs who have lived a majority of their adult lives online. Gen Z stands at the intersection of this generation gap. I feel incredibly lucky to have lived during a time when connectivity relied on in-person engagement. I follow a woman by the name of Aja Barber who got me thinking about this when she related a story in one of her Monday messages on Patreon. She was talking about attending a live music event, and she said, "It felt so good just to see people dancing and having a good time without their phones out." That comment made me feel really sad because I thought about the fact that Gen Z, whose whole lives have been perpetually documented, moderated, and curated by and for online audiences, have missed out on growing up with the freedom of not being perpetually under pressure to gain likes and followers. And honestly, I have to admit, I'm also guilty of participating in overexposing my kids as a former mom blogger. Many of us parents who've been online are now realizing the harm that oversharing in Facebook mommy groups can cause. Because when cute or silly videos go viral, kids can experience a lot of negative impacts. That said, it is now increasingly evident that the folks who created these apps did not have our best interest in mind, and it is not an overstatement to say social media companies and AI companies are one and the same. Research is now revealing that AI is surveillance software by default. And with that in mind, OpenAI and Google's recent contracts with the US Defense Department should make us concerned. And yet, despite all of this information, tech has become so ubiquitous, we don't even question the impact of growing up online in our society. When Rainier shares how older generation expressed discomfort in talking about branding and online identity, I was immediately reflecting on the generational reasons that might be. Gen Xers like me were brought up during a time when one of the worst things you could be accused of is selling out. Now there are countless accounts on TikTok explaining how you do just that in order to get a brand deal. Gen Xers grew up with a healthy distrust of the government and corporate interests. Our parents had lived experience during the Vietnam War and had watched the Nixon presidency unravel. And as children of the 80s, we experienced the impact of trickle-down Reaganomics. We grew up in a time of the Iran-Contra and WMD lies. And in our college days, we read books showing how the Black Panther Party and other civil rights leaders were targeted by our own federal government. I was born in the same year that MLK was assassinated. So compare that to the rise of influencer culture that has characterized Generation Like, as I once heard millennials be called. Then fast forward to Gen Z's highly curated aesthetics and Snapchat filters. While it's fun to be able to see what you might look like with bunny ears or 50 years in the future, I believe consistent use of these apps has caused many young people to over-prioritize packaging over substance. And it's no wonder we're seeing plastic surgery become so normalized. If you get used to seeing yourself with a snatched jawline and full lips, it makes sense you might begin to feel hypercritical about the very real face looking back at you in the mirror. Look, I don't have any answers, and I also don't think we should abandon social media entirely, but I do think we should be more intentional about how we use it. As a high school English teacher, I definitely believe we should be conscientious about how and when we expose technology to our kids. Research shows that introducing technology into school systems correlates with a reduction in academic proficiency. And it's telling that the tech titans who own social media platforms don't allow their own kids to use the very social media sites they say are safe. If previous generations were able to hold Joe Camel accountable for his role in encouraging kids to smoke, our generation should be able to limit social media and AI's increasing impact on body dysmorphia and depression among our youth. We can't close Pandora's box and go back to the time before the internet, but we can decide when and how we use online apps to connect with our family and friends. And we can also disengage from companies that don't align with our values. Tech companies want us to believe that AI is inevitable and that in order to stay connected with the people we care about, that connection can only occur on a toxic online platform where our speech is censored, muted, and surveilled. I'm not buying it. There are many folks creating open source apps, and they are interested, like I am, in building a world that uses technology to support humanity rather than to extract wealth from it. As you can tell, I have a lot more to say on this, and you should know I am working with others to build alternative spaces where we can connect with, educate, and support one another. So if you're interested in this, I encourage you to join my Patreon, where I'm going to be sharing opportunities to get involved. See the link in the description below. Nonetheless, in the meantime, I think we should be asking more questions and continue to share across generations about this. We are living in a time where our access to new content and ideas is constantly mediated by algorithms and aggregators. More and more, I'm reminded that real humans are much more valuable resources for connections, ideas, news, and recommendations. So please, let me know in the comments. How would you like to see technology and society evolve in ways that tech supports human connectivity, creativity, ingenuity, and interaction? And if you're a human, please type human in the comments, and I will personally respond to every comment. And specifically, I'm interested in knowing Gen Z, baby boomers, and even older millennials. What do you miss about growing up offline, younger millennials and Gen Z? What interests you about analog life? What do you want to know about what it's like growing up in the 90s and early 2000s? Just Talks podcast is produced by me, Allie Collins, an educator, writer, organizer, and parent. I created this show because we can't wait for someone else to save our schools or our democracy. We're going to have to do it ourselves. Here's how you can join the fight today. First, this podcast is free, but independent media isn't cheap. If you value these conversations, please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon at patreon.com/Just Talks podcast. Your support keeps the lights on and the mic open. Second, we need to get off the digital plantation. Don't just consume content, own your space. I'm launching a community-based office hours and a writing group next month. Click on the link in the description below and get on the wait list so you don't miss the launch. Also, don't forget to support the changemakers featured in the podcast. Check out their work below. And finally, thank you to all my patrons who made this video possible. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your support. And if you're new here, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Let's build a free and just society together. Thank you for watching Just Talks, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.